Here we are for week 1 of the Dungeons and Dragonites. This week we are playing against Snickers Bar with my Quark Drive themed team. So here's their team. So they only have 2 Pokemon that can Terra in this group, which are Altaria, which can be Terra Fire, and Sinistra, which can be Terra Dragon. So the big thing is figuring out what I want to lead, and I think Kilowattrel makes a lot of sense since they decided to bring their Incineroar this one, and I would like something that cannot be faked out. The other options now are in the back are kind of debating on what I'd like, and I think I would just like Rotom outspeeding everything on their team, being able to Volt Switch out into something in the back depending on what their lead is seems like a lot of value. And then since we are bringing all 6 Pokemon, it doesn't matter what's in the back because I'm bringing every single other Pokemon. So they end up leading Sinistra and Incineroar, and this could be good because I'm competitive on my Kilowattrel, but they reveal to not be intimidated on their Incineroar, probably for this exact reason. So I'm thinking about what I should do here. Definitely more concerned about Sinistra right here, and so I decided to just go for the Volt Switch and the Thunderbolt. However, I probably locked in a little quick because if they Terra Dragon here, this is a pretty awkward attack, so maybe I should have risked the Hurricane Miss just to get good consistent damage into it, or maybe I should have even done the Dark Pulse from the Rotom, but I ended up going for the double electric move, which definitely could be blown out with a Terra Dragon here. However, they ended up not tearing, which is really big. They go for a fake out into my Kilowattrel, which is good because there's a Cobra Cloak there. We end up getting a crit, which does a really big chunk of damage with the Volt Switch there, and then I end up switching in, debating between a couple, and I decided to just go for the Iron Hands because I feel like Iron Hands is in a pretty good position, especially since they are not intimidated on this Incineroar, and the Kilowattrel's Thunderbolt ends up being able to get the kill. I'm not sure if I needed the crit on the Rotom's Volt Switch to get the kill, since Kilowattrel does have a pretty good special attack. However, I think there's probably a good chance that I did need that crit to get that kill. So they end up leaving out Altaria here, which makes me feel like I'm in a pretty good position. So as long as they don't have Will-O-Wisp on their Incineroar, I'm very happy with my position with Iron Hands, because I don't think even attacking with both is going to do much more than just break my Citrus Berry. And so I go for the Tailwind to get some speed control and the Sword Stance to get my Iron Hands pretty good attack stats. Iron Hands is really bulky this week, not particularly offensive. And so we get the Tailwind off, and we outspeed now, and we get the Sword Stance up, and to my surprise here, Altaria actually has a Will-O-Wisp. I was definitely not expecting it to have Will-O-Wisp, but luckily for me it avoids it, which is massive, and now I feel like I'm in a majorly advantageous position. Definitely think I got a little bit lucky there. And so here we just go for the Volt Switch, and I go for the Thunder Punch just to make sure we kill this Altaria. This Volt Switch does like nothing. However, because it did so little damage, I feel the desire to bring in Pincursion, because Pincursion is going to give me the Quark Drive boost and the damage boost from the fact that I'm using an electric move. So this almost certainly should kill this Altaria with the +2 plus the Quark Drive plus the electric terrain boost, and we do in fact get the clean kill. I'm not sure how necessary Pincursion switching was there, but I definitely did not want to risk getting burned, because I feel like Iron Hands can just kind of single-handedly win us the game if we don't get burned there. And they revealed to be Rocky Helmet, which is really big. So any item reveal is massive in these games, because it means their other team's items are mitigated. So we know that there's no Rocky Helmet in their next team. So here I'm debating between Terrain, and I decide that it's not really worth it. I consider some switch-ins, but nothing on my team really wants to take a Diamond Storm, so I just decided to go for some damage, and I go for the Protect so I don't get faked out. I think there's some justification to just attacking, because they're not going to do too much damage even if they do fake out, and they end up reading my Protect, parting shotting into the Pincursion, getting the pivot and the damage reduction into my Pincursion. and they end up switching into the Sindrit, which honestly I'm not too concerned with, since Iron Hands is not actually taking much damage from the from either of these Pokemon, and gives me a good ability to heal up with some Drain Punches. Sadly, they get the defense boost with the Diamond Storm, and with that defense boost and the Parting Shot, my Wild Charge does a very little amount of damage. However, we also lose Pincurchin, which is pretty sad here. However, it did set up the Electric Rain, which is one of the big things we wanted it to, and I decided to just bring out the Raichu. So Raichu, speed-wise is not going to be that relevant here, but we are going to be able to get an Terra Electric Terrain boosted Thunderbolt into one of these, and so I decide that I should just attack there. I really think that maybe I should have just double up into that spot, but I decided to spread my damage to play around a possibility of a Protect, and obviously if they do Protect, if they follow me, I'll double up into the Sindrit no matter what, so there's not much reason to just double up into either of the Pokemon. So they do protect the Sindrit, so I'm glad I did at least attack one, not into that. However, a little bit sad I didn't go for the double up into the other spot. However, we see that this does a pretty good chunk of damage, and we go for the Drain Punch. It doesn't get the, goes into the Protect, and they end up going for a Trick Room, which luckily for me was on the last turn of Tailwind, and so Iron Hands is actually going to likely outspeed the Sindrit, and honestly has a chance to have outsped the other Pokemon. But here I just go for the Drain Punch to try to finish off, and the Volt Switch to get Raichu out, since Raichu is way too fast in Trick Room here. So they go for the Follow Me with Sindrit, and they end up revealing that they are in fact faster than my Iron Hands, which isn't too surprising since I'm assuming they are trained for Trick Room. However, them actually outspeeding is not too big of a deal here, because I actually because I gotta go second, I actually gotta heal up all the damage they dealt to me with that Drain Punch there. And then Raichu is able to finish off the Sindrit with the Volt Switch and able to switch in a Pokemon from the back. And so I'm feeling really good about my position here. I don't feel like they have much ways to actually just break through this Iron Hands. Iron Hands just seems like it's going to be able to kind of sweep the rest of their team. I decided to bring out Sandy Shocks because Focus Sash is one, because everything in my back now is going to outspeed anything they bring in Trick Room, and in addition to that, I have the ability to have Sash, so I can take any one hit, and so they just bring back out Incineroar, and I'm feeling pretty good. They're down to 3, and they definitely don't seem to have too much of a way to actually deal with this Iron Hands. So I just go for double attacks to try to finish off both these Pokemon. There's a chance that Iron Hands is going to outspeed Incineroar and Trick Room. We will see with based on their speed tier here, but if they go for the Fake Out, we get a kill, and if they don't go for the Fake Out, we have a chance of getting a double kill. So I go for Play Rough, which honestly does a pretty good chunk of damage to my Iron Hands, and I just go for the Parting Shot, which is going to lower my damage of Sandy Shocks. However, whatever in the back is going to take a big chunk of damage from this Drain Punch. However, if they didn't Parting Shot Incineroar or just died, so I think it makes sense for them to try to Parting Shot out. And also they might have been playing around me going for a Protect like I did last time. However, I'm pretty happy with just this Drain Punch. It's going to heal up most of if not all of the damage from that Play Rough. And then this Earth Power probably should get the kill too. And as we see, we are back up to max health. Iron Hands just keeps on healing itself like the paladin it is. And so now we have a Focus Sash Pokemon and a max health Iron Hand. Sadly, we lose Electric Drain, but it's honestly not too big of a deal since both of these Pokemon should be in range of a single Drain Punch. And so now we just kind of gonna protect the Fake Out because they only have 2 Pokemon, and then double attack, and we should be able to get the kill next turn. So yeah, you can see there's 2 turns of Trick Room, so we double protect, make sure we don't get, you know, eat up by some sort of fake out. This is very safe. And the fake out goes into Iron Hands, which means we could have gotten the kill with an attack from a Sandy Shocks, but like I said, I think the safe play is just to do what we did. And so now here, you know, we could get a double KO with Earth Power into Regidrago and Drain Punch into Incineroar. However, I don't want to get randomly killed by like a crit Draco Meteor, or maybe this is Specs and Draco Meteor just kills my Iron Hands. And assuming if they did outspeed my Sandy Shocks, they could theoretically have a way to possibly get out of this, but I decided to just go for the safe play, guarantee the kill onto the Regidrago, and though I don't win this exact turn, this was a deterministic win where the other one, theoretically, maybe some number of Draco crits could have gotten them out of it. However, luckily for us, we actually get to see one more item before we win the game, which is Incineroar having Citrus Berry, which means no Citrus Berry on the next team. And so here we just go for the double up, and we should get the clean kill onto Incineroar here and winning game 1. So this game went really well, entirely off the back of Iron Hands crushing and that one Will-O-Wisp missed. The one Will-O-Wisp missed definitely made this game go from what would have been an incredibly close, incredibly tight game to kind of completely commanding game, because the +2 Iron Hands without being burned just kind of they had no answer with this team comp. And so now we go to game 2 with our other team of 6. So here's their other team of 6. So here we see that they are actually going to have Dragon, Frostmoth, and Dragon Grumpig, or their new Terramons. So this one, we can see that they're also going to likely have like Drift Bloom with Grassy Seed is the most likely combination, like EV Light on the Blackie. So Urshifu not having a Focus Sash, since the Citrus had Focus Sash, probably means that there's a good chance that it might be like Scarf or Banded, or maybe even like you know, Mystic Water, since we but we'll see. And so I decided to just go with Iron Jugulus. I felt like it's probably the best way to kind of deal with their Drift Bloom lead by setting up my own Tailwind and being able to threaten a lot of their Pokemon with Snarls and water and flying coverage. So they end up leading Blackie and Frostmoth, and to my Jugulus and Vigavolt. And so Frostmoth is definitely a little bit concerning, especially with the Terra Dragon. We get the Quark Drive boost, so we do get the speed boost, and the big question is, what do we want to Tailwind, do we want to Snarl, do we want to try to get some damage? And I decided I'm just going to go for the Tailwind, try to make sure, or no, I'm going to go for the Taunt. I don't want them to be able to set up a Quiver Dance into this Frostmoth, because if Frostmoth doesn't get the ability to boost its stats, I feel very confident. I decided to just go for the Bug Buzz to get the guaranteed kill on Blackie, because pretty much even if it's an Easy Light and Max Bolt, this Choice Specs stab super effective move is going to definitely kill it. They end up going for the Terra Dragon, which makes sense. They don't want to get randomly hit by like a flying move here, or maybe an electric move. They go for the fake out into my Iron Jugulus, which is pretty sad, which means I don't get the Taunt Off, and they do in fact get the Quiver Dance as we would expect. Honestly, one of the awkward things here is the fact that I do going for this kill, and I get the kill because they are able to get a clean switch into something that can help support this Frostmoth. So maybe I should have considered that and just gone for the damage into Frostmoth instead, and just let Blackie kind of chill, because now they get Drift Bloom, which has the Grassy Seed as we'd expect, which now there's a chance that it outspeeds my Iron Jugulus depending on its speed stat. And the big question is, do I want to go for the Snarl or the Tailwind? And I went for the Tailwind here. I think that might be wrong. Maybe I should be going for a Taunt or a Snarl, because there's a good chance that my Pokemon just dies. And so I do go for the Tailwind. and then just the Bug Buzz into the Frostmoth because Bug Buzz is resisted by the Drifloon. And so we get the Tailwind up, which honestly I feel like is probably a pretty incorrect decision because though I do match their Tailwind, their Pokemon are both faster than my other Pokemon, and if I would have gotten a Snarl here, or I would have felt a little better, or maybe even if I got a Tailwind or a Trick Room, or Pond into the Drifloon, that also would have been better, but you get a little bit of damage. However, with this grassy terrain and the reveal of leftovers, that Bug Buzz ended up doing pretty negligible damage. And so here, the big question is how we're going to deal with this Frostmoth, which is super annoying offensively, and I decide that Luxray makes the most sense since I do have Play Rough and it is physical. Being able to hit it on its weaker side, since Frostmoth has the ability that doubles its special bulk, and also Quiver Dance is also helping with that. And so I decided to do that and just switch into the Lantern. I think Lantern seems like a pretty reasonable switch in, given that I can start Thunder Waving and giving my opponents chances of not moving while getting speed control that way. It also is resistant to some moves like Ice Beam and is also generically pretty bulky. Sadly, they end up having Will-O-Wisp, which is massively annoying for my Luxray. We take this Ice Beam very comfortably with the Lantern, and we end up missing the Play Rough, which is so annoying. Definitely a really annoying lack of damage there, which would have been very impactful even with the burn. So here, however, you know, with our own leftovers and our own grassy terrain appealing, we are doing pretty well health-wise in this Lantern, and the big question is, do I want to Terra or not? And I decided I don't want to Terra my Lantern. I'd rather just keep this resistant to ice, and I decided to go for the Snarl with Luxray, mitigating a little bit of damage on their side. And so though I'm not going to do as much damage as if I went to Play Rough, I do think that the fact that their damage is doing so much, I want to be able to deal with this. They end up doing a pretty good chunk of damage with the Bug Buzz, even with my Assault Vest. However, now both of their special attacks have dropped, and we're able to get this Thunder Wave off, and we are now Frostmoth, even though its boosted speed is not going to probably be able to outspeed, that we'll be able to outspeed them unless they're in Tailwind, and also there's a chance that it just won't move in the turn. So I'm pretty happy with getting the Thunder Wave off there, and Lantern slowly healing itself up with these leftovers in the grassy terrain. So, however, as we can see, Frostmoth is back at max health, and so this thing is going to be annoying to deal with in the late game. And so we just need to hopefully be able to, hopefully get rid of this grassy terrain this next turn, and then slowly be able to deal with it. So here, consider just doing another Play Rough to try to get some good damage into it now that the grassy terrain is going to go away. And I'm debating between a Thunder Wave into the Drifloon and or just a another attack. End up switching out Scizor, and the Scizor ends up switching into Scizor, which is a good play from them. Definitely smart at being able to take this Play Rough really well, and it definitely is really annoying for me because I didn't attack that spot either. However, luckily we get an attack drop, which is huge. Now the Scizor is going to be doing a fair bit less damage. And they protected into my Thunder Wave, so now my Thunder Wave is not doing as much damage. Or it's not mitigating their thing. And so here, we're doing okay, but this game is definitely going to be, definitely going to be a grindy one with this Drifloon and this Frostmoth. However, their Tailwind's up, and so there's a good chance they might try to set up Tailwind again. My Grassy Terrain is also gone, which should help me be able to deal with this. I decided to Volt Switch out because I want to get a little damage onto that because I'm actually more concerned of the Drifloon than I am with the Scizor right now. However, we go for the Scald into the Scizor instead of Thunder Wave because we want a little damage, and also the burn will be so much more impactful. They set up the Tailwind, which I don't care too much about. They were already probably going to outspeed everything. However, they get a Swords Dance, so now Scissor goes from -1 to +1, and it is a lot more scary offensively, so maybe I should have considered dealing a little bit more damage to the Scissor. Volt Switch does okay damage, and we are able to pivot out. However, the big thing with Flux Ray is now that we can intimidate, we can switch it back in for Intimidate later. I decide that I'm going to switch in to this Vikavolt because Vikavolt seems very good at dealing these Pokemon offensively. And in addition, I don't want to bring out my Rotom because it's going to not take hits from the Scissor particularly well. So here we have a pretty clean kill with Volt Switch or Thunderbolt into either of these Pokemon. And I decide to go for the Volt Switch into the Scizor, just to get the damage and the pivot, and then I also decide to go for a Scald into that spot. I think, so the reason I went for the double up into this spot was because I thought it was just a safe play in case a Volt Switch doesn't kill, and I was assuming I thought my Vikavolt was actually faster. However, this is a little bit of a misplay because my Lantern is actually slower than my Vikavolt, and so I end up taking a massive chunk of damage, which is not the end of the world. I do take that. They end up revealing that their Scizor is Life Orb here, and so I took a +1 close combat Life Orb with this thing, and however, the Volt Switch definitely would have killed by itself, so if I would have gone for like a Thunder Wave into the Drift Room or a Scald into the Drift Room, I would have felt a little better. But the reason why I made the play I did was because I thought Vikavolt was faster than my Lantern, but that was just me being dumb. And so I decided to switch out into the Rotom because I think Blizzards are going to do a very big chunk of damage here. And it also mitigates a little bit of the possibility of Frostmoth. So they end up bringing out the Urshifu, and we are pretty much forced to tear out this Rotom because we don't want them to click close combat into this spot. And I decided to go for the Thunderbolt, trying to get the kill on it, since I should get the kill on it since they don't have Focus Sash, because Cinderace had Focus Sash in game 1. Otherwise I'd probably go for like a Electroweb if I knew they could be Focus Sash. And I decided to go for the double up just to make sure, because they are bulkier, like the possibility of an AD Urshifu here. And we tear up to make sure they don't close combat. Shadow Ball ends up killing the Lantern, which makes sense. Not much we could do about that. Like, I could have maybe read it and protected, but I don't think I wanted to switch anything into that. They go for Surgeon Strikes, which makes sense. They played around like Terra. And we definitely take this. We take a fairly large chunk of damage, but we do take it. And we end up going for the Thunderbolt, which brings Urshifu down to Sash. And here we reveal and identify that my opponent actually cheated. They're not allowed to have two Pokemon or types or two different items on their team. So no duplicate items, and so this is actually technically would have been a forfeit win for me if I wanted it. However, I decided to just let us play it out and try to get the win normally, but I don't know if I would have actually made the changes if I knew the possibility of them having Focus Sash, but I definitely think that I would be more inclined to possibly have Electroweb instead. However, now we just need to try to get the win. So Rotom is in a somewhat awkward position, and but I'm going to go for the Electroweb, try to get the kill on both these Pokemon. Well, yeah, try to get the kill on both these Pokemon. There's a good chance Rotom's just going to die here. Maybe I should switch something out, but here we have some incentive to double up into the Urshifu in case they do kill Rotom. However, we're also actively concerned about this Drifloon. So I decided to go for that attack. However, they go for the Will-O-Wisp, which is really annoying, so now all my physical damage is burnt, and so I have to break their Frostmoth with special damage or burnt physical damage. So Urshifu does kill my Rotom as expected, and so this is why maybe I should have doubled up into the Urshifu. Instead, I just went for the Drifloon, which I think makes sense if I would be able to get this kill, but as you can see, I don't get close to getting that kill. I was hoping that I could get a crit through the defense boost, since I do have scope lens, and so I had a 50% chance to crit there. So here though, we're kind of just forced to switch in something, you know, one of these two Pokemon. I decide I want to bring in Vikavolt because I think the play rough from the Luxrays are going to be more important and necessary to deal with the Frostmoth in the back, and so we decided to just go for there. And so the big question is, do we want to lock into Thunderbolt, or do we want to Volt Switch out, or do we want to like lock into Bug Buzz? And I decided to just Volt Switch, going for the kill onto the Drifloon, and then the Iron Leaves going for the kill onto the Urshifu, which is Leaf Blade. So we should likely be able to get a double kill unless they protect or switch, and assuming we do get the double kill, that means we have a slight Pokemon advantage. However, they have the speed advantage now that they set up Tailwind. Surging Sights goes into Vikavolt, which Vikavolt takes, but not amazingly well. And now we are down to a 2 versus 3. However, two of my 3 Pokemon are burnt. And so definitely probably slightly favors them depending on my, you know, what specific it does here. So they end up bringing out their last 2 Pokemon, which are the, you know, the Frostmoth and the Grumpig. And so here I decided I just want to go for the play rough because I feel like I can deal with the Grumpig with just a with Bug Buzz from my Vikavolt, and so I decided to just go for the double up into this Frostmoth, try to get as much damage into it as possible. Obviously both of these moves are burnt, however they should do pretty reasonable damage despite that. So we're taking that very well with our Assault Vest, however that Night Slash does like nothing. Play Rough does a pretty good chunk of damage, and we luckily get the full para from this Frostmoth, so pretty happy there. However, with leftovers, Frostmoth is slowly gaining health. So here, kind of forced to some extent to do the same play. Again, the big question basically for us is, do we want to Snarl instead? But I feel like we're kind of forced to play rough because this is the only way we're actually going to do meaningful damage into this Frostmoth. We take another Psychic pretty well, but we're likely not going to take another one. We get the crit this time, but it still does very little, and then we miss our second play rough out of the third time we clicked it. So definitely a little bit annoying there, and they get the plus, you know, the Quiver Dance boost. And at this point, I don't think we particularly have a clean way to be able to break this team, or break their, you know, position with my 2 Pokemon being burnt. Like, obviously, if either of these Pokemon were not burnt, I think we might have been able to get out of this, but yeah, we're definitely in bad shape. So we just go for a play rough again, hope we take that attack and go for the same damage. They end up, you know, getting the attack with this Psychic, getting the kill, and with that, it's definitely dead. If we would have taken that Psychic, there's a chance we could have killed this Frostmoth, but at this point I don't even think we can kill Frostmoth at all. And so slowly, the most slow death possible, because this game definitely was over multiple turns ago, but we have to see all the slow healing from life leftovers and me doing like 2 damage and this burn ship. But yeah, the game's definitely over at this point. This Bug Buzz here is completely dead. And with that, we lose game 2. A little bit sad. I feel like, you know, we had some chances, but I feel like for the most part, it was my lack of good physical damage and not really being able to break through this Frostmoth, and Drifloon was my big issue. With that, we get to game 3. So I decide to bring the team I brought game 1 into this one, and I decide I want to lead Raichu and Pincurchin. The idea behind Raichu Pincurchin lead is that it's one of the better ways to deal with the Drifloon, and also I am Terra Fairy, so that's one of the better offensive ways with Terra Blast on Pincurchin, so it's one of the better offensive ways to deal with a Terra Dragon Frostmoth. And so that's kind of the basis of my decisions on these. So they end up leading the same lead they did in game 2 of the Thwackey and Frostmoth. I lead the Raichu. And Pincurchin, we get rid of their grassy terrain, which means that if they don't switch out their Thwackey, then I will prevent them from having grassy terrain for their Drifloon, which is really big. And here we just go for the Electric Web and the Terra Blast, or Terra Electric Terra Blast. I think that there's a chance that maybe I should have just gone for a Volt Switch or Psychic with the Raichu instead. However, luckily for us, we did in fact read their Terra Dragon properly. I understand, I'm probably sure they want to play around the possibility of some strong electric damage from my Pincurchin. However, luckily for me, I was going for fairy damage, and so now my attack is in fact super effective. No idea if this kills or not, but I am Life Orb, I do have Stab, and my Pincurchin does have a very good amount of physical attack investment. So we get the Electro Web, which, like I said, doesn't do much damage, and I don't know how important speed control is here, given the fact that Pincurchin isn't outspeeding anything, even at -1. They end up doing a chunk of damage with this U-turn, and so I feel like maybe if I would have just Psychicked into the Thwackey spot, or even Volt Switch out, I would have been a little bit more happy, but you know, it's fine, it happens. They end up bringing out their Grumpig, which is going to be somewhat good here, but they get the Quiver Dance off, and we kind of just need to hope that this Terra Blast can get the kill, because now they are setting up with this Drifloon. We go for the Terra Blast, wincing, hoping that we can get the kill, and it kills, gets the one shot. We crit there. I have no idea how important that crit was or not. Pincurchin does not have the highest base stat total. I am pretty much a max attack with Life Orb, so hard to say if I did get the kill or not, but without the crit, but definitely lucky to get the kill there, because if I didn't get the kill, I would have felt really awkward. So they bring back out that Thwackey, which means that we are slightly in an awkward position with terrain-wise. So I would somewhat like to switch out Pincurchin, but I don't feel like there's a super clean way. I considered Sucker Punch onto the Grumpig, and honestly probably would have been a reasonable decision, but I decided to just go for Terra Blast into the Thwackey, try to get a good chunk of damage into it. Like I said, there's a chance that Sucker Punch into Grumpig better, because we did see that they had at least 3 attacking moves, which means there's a good chance they don't really have a lot of status moves. Volt Switch does an okay bit of damage. We decided to bring out Kilowatt Roll in case they went for a U-turn or a grass move into my Raichu spot, so Kilowatt Roll can resist those. And they end up going for the Psychic into my Pincurchin, and they also go for a Wood Hammer into my Pincurchin. So really sad, because if I went for the Sucker Punch, I would have felt like I was in very good shape, or if I just went for the Protect, that would have been an amazing shape. But going for neither of those, I lose Pincurchin for pretty much not much at all, like very minimal damage from both into both of these Pokemon. However, here we decided to just bring out between the Sandy Shocks and the Rotom, and I decided to just bring out the Rotom because I think it's going to be the better of all the options. I don't really want to bring out Iron Hands into a Stab Psychic, and I also kind of want to save it for later after we dealt with the Drifloon. And so here I decide I want to deal with Thwackey and just go for the Hurricane, get the kill there, and go for the Dark Pulse into the Grumpig, try to get some stab damage, possibility of a flinch, We can see our super effective damage, and we do pretty good damage. We luckily connect this hurricane and get a nice clean kill onto the Thwacky, and we're in a pretty reasonable position. I'm assuming they're probably just going to go for Power Gem, which they do into Kill Watchful. I should definitely take it, but, you know, definitely now in range for pretty much any other attack. And we are now in a pretty reasonable position. They bring out their Drift Bloom, which gets the defense boost from the grassy terrain, and now has the opportunity to set up some Tailwinds and other annoying things. And so I decide I just want to try to kill this Drift Bloom. If I can get rid of this Drift Bloom, I feel like Iron Hands in the back should be able to finish up the game for me, because I just don't want my Iron Hands to get burned. I luckily outspeed, which is big. I did not expect that, and they end up flinching, which is huge. This prevented Tailwind, and now they are in a position where I'm going to be able to outspeed and kill this thing, and they can't do anything about it. And this was pretty awkward position, but because they aren't really fast on their Drift Bloom, they went for more bulk and be able to get the kill. And so here we just bring out the Raichu. I considered Sandy Shocks, but I'd like to maintain its sash as long as I can, and so I think Raichu makes sense. I think there's some justification that maybe Sandy Shocks would have been better, but here we just go for Electro Web, make sure we can outspeed this Piglet and the Grumpig with Iron Hands later, and also has the possibility of punishing a switch in to something else. They end up just protecting with the Drift Bloom, which is a little bit annoying. Definitely makes me feel a little bit sad about my decision to go for the double up to some extent. But the Electro Web lowering Grumpig speed is going to be impactful possibility for this, especially with this Grumpig being clearly a Salt Test with how little damage I've been doing with these special moves. But sadly they get the kill and reveal their fourth attacking move from Grumpig. So now here we just consider bringing out Iron Hands, but I would, as previously mentioned, I don't really want to take a Stab Psychic move into it, and so I decided to just bring out Sandy Shocks, saving Iron Hands for later. I go for the Electro Web again, same idea, get a little bit of damage, lower the speed. I think there's some justification just to protect, to do my sash, which is what I end up doing, and go for the Dark Pulse to get the kill onto this Drift Bloom, or damage to whatever they switch into. So hoping that they just go for the attack into the Sandy Shocks is what I'm expecting them to do, and if that does happen, I'll be very happy, because that would mean I get to have Sash Jump, and we do. And so very happy about our current position in that aspect. However, it's still, I think, a 3v3, and so we just need to hope that we can get there. So they bring out their Urshifu, and the fact that Urshifu is in fact a Sash is somewhat annoying. I decide I probably just want to go for, I'm considering just going for Electro Web to break the Sash on Urshifu, and then just Dark Pulsing into the Grumpig to get a little damage. However, because I'm stuck with Dark Pulse, I can't kill this Urshifu unless I hit it with a super effect, like a Thunderbolt of the Worlds. And so I am somewhat interested in possibly just going for the Thunderbolt into Dark Pulse to try to kill the Urshifu before it can move, instead of going for the Electro Web to just break the Sash. And it's a really tough decision, and I decide to go for the double up, try to get the kill onto the Urshifu before it can move, and they protect the Urshifu. I get max punished for that decision. Electro Web Dark Pulse would have been so much better, but it's okay. We're fine. We just hope that we can prevent, or hope that they don't break my Sash, hope they attack Rotom instead. And they do in fact attack Rotom, which definitely helps me feel more confident about the possibility. However, that crit is somewhat annoying. And so now at this point we are going to do the same attack, as we did last time, since they already protected. I would love to switch moves with this Rotom, but I think it's just this is the most safe option. One of the downsides is because I clicked Volt Switch last time, they might read my Volt Switch and possibly Psychic into what will be the Iron Hand switch in, which would be quite annoying. However, I'm pretty fine with it either way. So they end up switching out in order to let Urshifu take the turn, which makes sense. Scizor is the last mon. This should do a pretty good chunk of damage to this double up. Definitely not going to kill, but definitely going to do a very respectable amount of damage, as you can see. You know, bringing it down to like 30%. And then we bring out the Iron Hands, which is the last mon. Hope that they don't Psychic into the spot. However, we have a solid chance of being able to take it, even if they do Psychic into it, or like we do take it. We'll see how much we take it by. So here, obviously, some instances possibly set up a Sword Stance. However, we just want to try to get as much damage onto this Grumpig as possible. Because once this Grumpig goes down, I think Iron Hand should be able to help clean this up pretty comfortably. And we just decided to go for the double up into that spot because we yeah. So then we're going for the Bullet Punch into the Rotom. Sadly, Rotom does not take it. I was hoping it would because it is resisted, but they are Life Orb. And so we're just hoping now that we can do a pretty good chunk of damage. From the earlier Electro Orb, we do in fact outspeed the Piglet, and however we do take a Psychic. And so here we're just kind of hoping to be able to finish it off before it attacks the second time. Which we should be able to if we hit it with one of these other moves. I considered going for the Drain Punch to get a little bit of healing, but I don't think Drain Punch plus Electro Web is going to do enough to the Grumpig, and so I decided I actually probably just need a Thunder Punch to get the kill on it, and I considered going for the Earth Power plus that, or the Electro Web plus the Thunder Punch, and like I said, I feel like we need to go for the Thunder Punch, and I decided to go for the Electro Web because I don't want to miss. Want to get the kill, go for the double up. They go for the Bullet Punch, which I think is a little bit of a misplay from them because I do outspeed and I should kill this Grumpig even with attack. And in addition to that, technically that actually gives me more health, so I'm more likely to survive a Psychic even if I don't kill it. However, with that Earth Power, this Thunder Punch definitely should get the kill, and now I'm feeling very confident about my ability to win this game. And so now it's a 2v2. We have Iron Hands plus my Sandy Shocks that still has Sash intact. And so here we just go for the Thunder Punch, and I decided to go for the Electro Web. Maybe that's a little bit risky. Maybe I should have gone for attack. However, if I don't go for the Electro Web and they protect one of these, it could be awkward. But now, with the double connect from Electro Web, this should give me the game because Iron Hands should be able to take any attack from his Urshifu and kill it. They end up just going for the Sandy Shocks, killing the Sandy Shocks, but Iron Hands finishes off the game. And with that, we win week 1. This was a really tight and interesting set. Game 1 was kind of a blowout because of a Will-O-Wisp miss, but other than that, all these games came down to basically a 1v1 end game. Really grindy, really interesting sets. It was a lot of fun. Definitely long games, but very interactive, very fun games with lots of interaction and using a lot of interesting Pokemon. So really enjoyed this game. Hopefully the rest of the season is as fun as these ones, and hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.